It's a rock and roll whiskey show quickie. Now, here's your host, Mark Donner.
Just wanted to come on and make a quick episode off the cuff. I didn't even write anything or plan anything out on this, but I thought it was important to commemorate a moment in what will probably become some sort of music history as we go forward in time. And I'm talking about the fact that we've got a new Rolling Stones record, Hackney Diamonds, came out a few weeks ago, and new music from the Beatles, all in the period of about 3 weeks, in the year 2023, which I think is worthy of commemoration, worthy of just sitting back and thinking about, because it's probably not something that's going to happen again. So I just wanted to talk about that for a minute. So let's start with the Rolling Stones. They've got a full album out, Mick Jagger, Keith Richards, Ronnie Wood, and other players. And we'll talk about some of those as we go through this. But Hackney Diamonds, in a lot of ways, I think it's a strong record. And I would say it stands up against some of their best from the 60s and 70s. When I say that, I think about Let It Bleed, Sticky Fingers, Some Girls, etc. Now, it's not those records. Those are classic records from the Rolling Stones when they were young and hungry and intense and putting out just that great classic music that we still listen to this day. Hackney Diamonds stands up to that. They're not reinventing the wheel on this record, and I think that's what we want. So it still sounds like Mick, Keith, and Ronnie. I think that's a good thing. They've added the modern production techniques to make it sound new and fresh, and they've embraced what, if you're a YouTuber or TikToker or whatever, an influencer, they call it a collab, where you've got influencers from other channels coming on and participating in your content. Stones did that here, and they've always done that pretty well. They've had guests on their records from time to time, but on this one, they've got Stevie Wonder and Elton John playing keyboards on a couple songs. They've got Paul McCartney playing electric fuzz bass on one song. Pretty cool. And then on Sweet Sounds of Freedom, which Stevie Wonder also plays on, you've got Lady Gaga singing the female vocal part of that song, accenting what Mick is doing. And it's a really good song. They even have contributions from Charlie Watts, who is the recently deceased legendary Stones drummer. And then they brought in Bill Wyman for a song as well, the original Stones bassist. So they got a lot of help. They got cool new production from Andrew Watt, who's produced a lot of pop records. He also has done the last couple Ozzy Osbourne records. He did a Pearl Jam. He's been all over, but he did produce Hackney Diamonds with the exception of one song, which was done by Don Was, who has worked with Rolling Stones a lot. But you've got some pretty good production on that. And it's controversial for the old guys that may not appreciate the more modern sounds, but I think it works pretty well and it really accents what they're trying to do. So I think it's a pretty strong album. I'd say it's anyway their best in the last 30 years or so. I'd probably have to go back and listen to some of those to definitively say that, but that's how I'm feeling right now about Hackney Diamonds. But it's not just the Rolling Stones. Yesterday we had the Beatles dropping a song. Now, we're not going to get a whole record from the Beatles. Obviously, two of the members are no longer alive, no longer with us, and they haven't been for a long time. But thanks to the perseverance of Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr, and I guess contributions from others, Yoko Ono being the primary one because she had the cassettes that they brought John's vocals from, Giles Martin, son of legendary Beatles producer George Martin, and filmmaker Peter Jackson as well, whose technology that they famously used for the Beatles Get Back documentary, where they took the Let It Be sessions and really poured through those and created I guess it's a close to 8-hour documentary, which is mesmerizing. It's the most mesmerizing 8-hour thing I've ever watched. And they used that to take the last song that they had, which was just a snippet of a song that John Lennon was working on in his New York apartment in the 70s, singing and playing piano, onto a cassette tape in 1979, I think. It's the same stuff that Free as a Bird and Real Love, those songs that came out in the 90s. It's the same source material that they got that stuff from. But that stuff was usable, and they were able to use the 1990s technology to pull that out and use it. This one had piano on it, and it was a cheap cassette. And they couldn't ever get it to work. There's a 12-minute documentary out. You'll find it on YouTube, on Apple Music. I saw it on Disney Plus, all about the making of this song Now and Then. So I'd recommend watching that. But they used Peter Jackson's AI tech to separate out John's voice from the piano. And then they used more technology to enhance that, make it so where it sounded like pretty well studio quality, added a lot of production on top of it. And then they'd worked on this back in the 90s and it never came together. So they had George's guitar work on it. So they were able to add that. And then Paul and Ringo came in and added new bass and drum parts. You got Paul adding to the vocals on top, layered on top, harmonizing with Paul in certain places, particularly in the chorus. And you got a Beatles song. Is it the greatest Beatles song ever? No, it would be utterly forgettable if it were just a song on a Beatles album. It would be fine as part of an album. It wouldn't have been a single. It wouldn't have been on their list of number one songs. But it's Beatles in the year 2023 that was just recorded, just created, just updated. All four original members, John, Paul, George, and Ringo. And it's very cool. So, new Stones. That sounds great. Hackney Diamonds is a great album. I've listened to it over and over the last couple of weeks. And a new Beatles song that's pretty good. Pretty cool, right? I think so. So that's all I wanted to talk about. I won't have a whiskey rec for you this time, but grab a scotch or grab a, in honor of Keith Richards, pour some Jack Daniels or do whatever you want and make a nice cocktail and enjoy some Stones and Beatles this weekend. I guess I can give you a quick recommendation, but it's not one you're going to be able to find on your liquor store shelf in most cases. If you happen to be driving on Interstate 80, crossing the Nebraska-Wyoming border, stop at that first exit when you enter Wyoming at Pine Bluffs Distilling. If you use your GPS and follow it down the country roads, you'll think you're going the wrong direction, but you're not. It's out there. You'll see it. Cool little distillery. They make a lot of good whiskeys. When we went last year, I bought 4 bottles just because I really liked it. Try the oated whiskey. It's made with 78% oats, 22% malted grain. One distinction with Pine Bluffs is they do all of their malting on premises. They've got a whole operation where they're able to store grain and bring it in and handle all of the malt process right on site, which doesn't happen at a lot of distilleries, doesn't even happen at the large distilleries very often. So this is a very cool distinction that sets Pine Bluffs apart a little bit. Their whiskeys are really good. The oated whiskey for me is just one that stands out because you don't see that a lot. Not a common choice when you go to your liquor store shelves. So kind of a cool, different thing about Pine Bluffs in addition to everything they do with the malting. So, and it's just fun to sit out there. They've got a nice cocktail bar out there, really nice facility, visitor center, place you can buy some bottles as well as different merchandise, cups and shirts and hats, and nice people out there. We got to meet a few of the people who run the distillery and it was a lot of fun. If you happen to get your hands on it or you happen to be driving by, check that place out. Cool local distillery. Normally I do more widely available ones, but since this is just a quick episode, I thought I'd throw that in there as a recommendation if you happen to be able to get your hands on it. Now, if you want some listening homework, I would give you Now and Then, the new song by the Beatles. Obviously, that's the one song. They've also got a 2023 remix of Love Me Do, which sounds pretty good. And it's just, I think they had to remix and put something out there so they could sell the vinyl and the CD, but which I have ordered. It's coming in a couple weeks. And then watch that documentary. It's 12 minutes long and definitely worth seeing how this came together, explained a lot better than I did in this off-the-cuff podcast. Then also Hackney Diamonds, listen to the whole thing. There's some great songs. Figure out what your favorites are. Mine are Angry, Depending on You, Bite My Head Off, which is the one that features Paul McCartney on the bass, and Sweet Sounds of Heaven, which is the one that features Stevie Wonder and Lady Gaga on some pretty epic vocals and great soulful bluesy music from Lady Gaga and Mick Jagger on that. So that's my recommendation. Like I said, not a real episode this week since we just did the Halloween episode on Tuesday, but we'll be back for you with another episode here next Friday.
Another episode of the Rock and Roll Whiskey Show will be here soon. Be sure to subscribe on Apple, Spotify, Overcast, YouTube, or whatever player you prefer. You can get show notes as well as tasting notes for the featured music and whiskey at rockandrollreclaimed.com. You can also get links to Mark's social media channels at the website. The Rock and Roll Whiskey Show is a production of Rock and Roll Reclaimed. Goodbye.